So the video from the Department for Education has actually really incensed me. As much as we've sort of joked about the woman on there that says, oh, you know what it's like, sometimes you forget to feed the children. When you break this down and when you think about what this was sold to us as and how this was going to be funded, the flippancy of what you would do with an extra half an hour in the morning versus somebody who can no longer give their child the education that they wanted to give them is palpable. So we were originally told that VAT on education was going to fund the breakfasts. Then we were obviously told that actually you cannot say that the VAT on education is going to one particular place. So even though Keir Starmer said it was going to social housing, we all had to accept that any money raised would just be going into the general pot. But it was widely known that Bridget Phillipson's reason for putting VAT on education was so that she could have 6,500 new teachers and fund breakfast clubs, which is something that Keir Starmer's been wanging on about, relentlessly, about how his Labour government has changed things for the better. And one of the things that they're changing is he talks about bringing children out of poverty. And he talks about the free breakfast clubs. Now, the things to note, they're not free, they're taxpayer-funded breakfast clubs. We've got this really weird link between taking children out of poverty while putting parents into poverty. So the more that Rachel Reeves hikes the taxes, the more that Rachel Reeves puts pressure on the money in your pocket or lack of money in your pocket, the more families are actually going into poverty. So we haven't made that link. We're not joining the dots there. And then we're equally not joining the dots with for what one child gets, another child's had to give up. So in this video, the Department for Education have said, what would you do with an extra half an hour? And they're trying to say, aren't we lovely that we've given so many families half an hour extra by giving their children breakfast at school? So where to start with this? Well, for a start, those breakfasts were already available with charities. So they weren't costing the taxpayer anything. They were charitably funded. And they've always been available for children who have needed them. And the schools have had much more discretion and much more ability to help provide a breakfast for the kids and a lunch and at times a dinner for the children that really need it. Now, no one's saying the spotlight shouldn't be on kids that need to have extra help. It absolutely should. But what we've done here is we've adding VAT on education to parents as we're going to get 6,500 new teachers and we're going to give kids free breakfasts because it's so important and there's so many hungry children you can have half an hour free in the morning and so-and-so's had to give up their education for the privilege of that. So we've got families, we've got record numbers of schools closing. It's in the 50s now of schools that have closed. Bridget Phillipson will say, well, schools close every year and new schools open. That's just not true. So let's debunk that theory. The schools that are opening are small, niche, special educational needs schools that are funded by the local authority. They are not big, private, independent sector schools. So that's a lie. We are having schools closing on the Education Secretary's watch because she imposed VAT on them. And the reason that she imposed VAT on them was ideological. And it was because she doesn't like the independent sector. She only likes the state sector, but she had to give you a tangible reason. So that was breakfast and what have you. So I think that the number at the minute we're looking at of children coming out in the next couple of years is 56,000 children will be leaving the independent sector and going into the state sector. There is no funding for that. There's no extra money for that. So when these children go into the state sector, which we know is already overcrowded, they've left the education that suited their needs. Whether you agree with them going to independent school or not is nothing to do with you, me, Bridget or anyone. It was a choice that the family had made. So it was their own independent choice in the same way that you might want to buy a red car and I might want to buy a black car. You might want to shop at Aldi. I might want to shop at Lidl. You're allowed to make that choice. You might agree with digital ID. I might disagree with digital ID. I don't think we've ever found anyone yet that does agree with it. But anyway, you get my point. So freedom of choice was something that we've always had in this country. By imposing tariffs on it, which is what we do to bad people. We hear about all this all the time. We hear about, well, we're going to impose tariffs on countries that we don't believe are behaving correctly. So we're putting tariffs on Russia because we don't agree with the war in Russia. President Trump is putting tariffs on anyone that he doesn't believe has treated him fairly. So Bridget Phillipson has put a tariff on education for children who are allowed to go to a school that's not the state offering because their parents have made that choice, that sacrifice, whatever. They've decided that's what they're going to do. In the same way that Bridget Phillipson bought a house in a really lovely suburb of London where all of the schools were Ofsted outstanding. That's what she chose to do. She bought her children's education by buying the house in the catchment area that would get them into the really good state school. For families that couldn't do that, they weren't able to do that. But Bridget isn't being taxed. She's not having a tariff on her choice. She's being told you can do that because that's sort of socially acceptable, because you're buying a house, you're not really buying education, are you? Even though you are actually buying education. So if you want to tutor your child for the 11 plus, you're allowed to do that. That's your aspiration for your child, where you can try and get them into a school that suits their needs, and you're allowed to do that because the school is a state offering. So you won't be charged 20% on your tutor. You will be allowed to use social mobility. You will be able to use your financial acumen to your advantage. You will be able to play the system, get your foot on the ladder. You will be able to do all of those things, but because it's a state school, you're allowed to do that because that's acceptable. But if it's an independent school, that's not acceptable. So you may not use your financial acumen or your savings or your choice to send your child to that school. So the tariff that has been imposed is education, and we are fining people for choosing a different education. And even though Bridget doesn't accept it, says that people in the independent sector have broad shoulders, which will be words that come and haunt her for the rest of her years. People haven't been able to absorb those costs, and people didn't have the broad shoulders, which is why we're seeing tens of thousands of children leave the independent sector. It's why we're seeing so many schools close. It's why we're seeing local towns decimated by the closure of the biggest employer. It's why we're seeing families being ripped apart. It's why we're seeing parents trying to get 2 or 3 or 4 different jobs so that they could pay the fees and not being able to do so. It's why we're seeing the shift in society, whereas once you could and people were either pleased for you or they weren't pleased for you, but they didn't try to tax it, whereas now you can't. We're making it unachievable for the normal working family. And we're making it eminently achievable for the elitist families, and everything that Labour said they didn't want, they're actually creating. So they've now created an independent sector which is only truly accessible if you are in the elite, if you are in the tax bracket that can afford this, if you are earning enough money that 20% extra on your fees doesn't matter. Well, that's a tiny amount of people. And so we've now got exactly what she said she didn't like. We've got the elite sector, and all of those people that were just about keeping their heads above water and were just about putting their kids in a school that suited their needs, that made their children happy, that helped them learn, so that hopefully if they can come out of that school and get a job, they can give back to the economy. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Is this not what we're all supposed to be doing? So we've stopped that. We've put the skids on it and said that's not happening anymore. We're going to put a tariff on you for wanting to do that. And we're going to tell people it's so that other people can have breakfast, because it's really important that the children have breakfast. And we're going to sell it that you're getting £7,500 worth of free childcare a year by being able to put your child in a breakfast club. We're selling it that you can get to work earlier, and we're selling it as how important it is for parents to be able to go and do their job and not have to worry about expensive childcare. So we're giving you free childcare, and we're allowing you, nice of you, to go to work. We're saying it's going to be easier for you to go to work because we're going to make it free for you to send your kids to school. I mean, it's not free because you're going to pay for it in the tax and your bracket. You know, if you're earning if you're going to work an extra half an hour early, you might be earning a bit more money. We'll have that, thanks very much. So it's effectively, that's what it was sold to us as. But yet we hear from the Department for Education's own video that in fact this is nice to clear the dishes and to tidy the kids' bedrooms and to get to school with a bit more time on our hands, or go for a coffee with our mates. Now, I'm not saying any of these things aren't great. They're all really lovely. I really struggle to keep this house tidy. I really struggle with my children's bedrooms, and I really struggle with the mornings. It's very, very difficult getting out of the house in the morning with the children and all the things that need doing. But I do it because I'm a parent. And I am their parent, and that's what I signed up for when I had children. So if I have to get up half an hour earlier, then that's what I do. And if they have to chip in, then that's what they have to do. And if bedrooms aren't tidied, then they're not tidied. But we're at school and we've had breakfast, because it's my role as a mother. I think it's negligent if I forget to feed my children. I mean, we can laugh about it. Isn't that funny? No, it's not actually. It's not remotely funny. If I'm funding somebody who forgets to feed their children, then we've got some really serious issues and social services need to be involved. The majority of children, and thank goodness we can say the majority of children, have access to a good breakfast at home. The majority of children have a breakfast available to them and parents that make sure that that happens. There is a minority of children, and it is a growing minority, but there is a minority of children who are in poverty, who do not have that. And it is absolutely unacceptable that that should be a thing. And lifting children out of poverty is something that everybody shares as a common goal. It's beyond important. It should be our absolute top priority. But what we're doing is we're putting families in poverty by putting more and more tax impositions on them, making it harder and harder for them to get a job, making it harder and harder for them to have any money in their pocket for more than 3 minutes before it goes out on food inflation, on energy inflation, on everything that is the cost of existence. So on the one hand, we're saying, isn't this a great thing that we're doing? We're feeding children that really need breakfast, whereas the children that really need breakfast are getting less and less and less because the money that was there is now being spread so thin, and the core budgets are being used on children coming into the state sector from the independent sector that weren't there before. Now, the financials of that are, if you had a child in the independent sector, you weren't using the tax that you were paying for their education. So effectively, you were saving the taxman money. That's not happening anymore. Now you're using that money, so the pot is becoming smaller and smaller. So we have to ask for more and more and more. And so the circle goes on. But if you are one of those families who have had to take their child out of the independent establishment that was suiting their needs, that fit the family's needs, that fit the family's ideas, that fit the family's goals, aspirations, which is all now a dirty word, we may not have those. If you've had to take your child out for that under the guise of a free breakfast, which has now turned out in the Department for Education's own video as to be extra time cleaning the house, then that's going to hurt a lot. And if Labour think that their core voters are people that, or if they think that people that send their children to independent schools don't vote for them, they're wrong. People that send their children to independent schools did vote for Labour, and I use the past tense. I can't imagine they'll be voting for them again. I know a lot of parents who have said, I'm ashamed I voted for Labour. I will never do it again. It will be the biggest regret of my life. And it is that social conscience, it is that social morality that is now leading to the discontent with Labour. And yet they produce videos like the one that they've just done saying, we will take one child's education away from them, we will take one family's choice away from them, we will take the aspirations of a family away from them so that another family can have a breakfast. And we're going to pretend it's free, and we're not going to explain to them how that was paid for. And then we have Bridget, who tweeted the other day, another one of her pious tweets, and this was the one I think I said to you all in a different video. I cannot believe she's done this. So, this is my mission, our shared mission, the freedom to choose your path in life, unless of course that takes you down the independent sector. The freedom to succeed, whatever your background, unless of course your background was one where you were sent to an independent school. Whoever your parents, unless of course your parents are ones that wanted something different for you. Wherever you're from, unless of course you're from a demographic that is not the one that was Bridget's demographic. The freedom to do the work you love. Unless of course Labour has stymied you in every which way and how, so that you now no longer can do that. And the work that you love could be sending your child to the school that meets their needs. And that is what this Labour government is doing. This Labour government is driving change. They're absolutely driving change. And they're going faster than any of us could have ever had the misfortune to dream. Labour are shattering society like no other government ever. And they're using our children, your children and my children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbours' kids. They are using the nation's children as political pawns. They're using them to climb up the political ladder. And I could not ever vote for Labour on that basis alone. And if it's a single issue vote, Labour will find that they will lose supporters in droves over their stance on children and education.